put up our picture there. How many people are familiar with leg day? I don't know if you can see his legs too good, but his legs are kind of small compared to his arms and his chest. And it says, friends, don't let friends skip leg day. I had a picture that if Pastor was here, I may have shown. It had a chicken up there and said, don't forget leg day, but you know how much he loves chicken. So in keeping with the theme of leg day, I heard that whales never skip leg day. Have you looked at how huge their calves are? And honestly, I don't mind leg day at the gym. It's just the 2 days after that I can't stand. And then you want to know what my favorite leg day exercise is? Skipping. So the title of the message is Seeking Joy and Don't Forget Leg Day. And hopefully that when we get there, it will make sense to you. Because right now I think you're sitting there going, what's leg day got the joy? Leg day never seemed like joy if I was working out in the gym. But so go ahead and let's put up Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. It said, trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. And so there's a few things in here. It says, trust in God with all your heart. What does all your heart mean? That means you're not holding back. You're all in, right? Everything that is you're in. Well, all your heart, right? And then the word acknowledge there, because it said in all your ways acknowledge God, right? The word acknowledge means to be intimate with God, meaning experiential knowledge or relational intimacy. And so in other words, I know God so much because I experience him, not that I read about him in books, but I actually experience God. And so you're not relying on intellectual awareness. Oh, I've been told what God is. What you're doing is that you have actually gone there and experienced God. And so what happens is when you say trust in the Lord with all your heart and acknowledge him, he shall direct. So what we got to say is I got to acknowledge him through that intimacy that comes by I have truly experienced God. Probably if you're a big movie buff, Avatar. I don't know if you remember what they'd always say, I see you. In a way, it's kind of like saying to God, I see you. In other words, I acknowledge all that you are and everything that you are. It's not just, it's a superficial relationship. All right, let's go ahead and put up Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, and all your soul, with all your strength, your entire being. Once again, kind of sounds like everything, right? It said all your soul, with all your strength, your heart, your mind. So we need to love God with all of our being, spirit, mind, or soul and body. So what it means is in everything we are, that we need to. Because a lot of times we sit there and say, well, hey, I'll acknowledge him a little bit with my awareness or whatever, but I'm not dedicating everything to him, right? So then let's put up Psalms 55:22. He said, cast your burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee. He shall never suffer the righteous to be moved. So the definition of cast is to throw something forcefully. And so when you're doing this, he wants us to share our burdens with him. So when you're talking about throwing stuff forcefully, so what you're saying is not like, well, God, here's my burdens, if you want to take them, or if you could help me out a little bit. What he said, chunk it. He wants to carry those burdens for us. And how are you casting your burdens to God? We're going to him in prayer, right? We're sharing, hey, these are the things that are messing up my day. These are the things that are messing up, they're getting in my way. And it may be getting in my way of worshiping you. It may be getting in my relationship with you, in the way of my relationship with you. It might be addictions that I have to certain things in life that are getting in my way. And what he's saying is, I want you to cast those burdens on him. And he said he would break chains of bondage for us. You know, it talks about that we are slaves to sin. What does that mean? Once you get into a life of sin, you can serve sin. I don't understand that. The easiest example I can give you is telling a small lie, telling a white lie. You tell a white lie, but how many other lies do you have to tell? Somebody asks you a question, now you have to elaborate on the lie. Well, I couldn't come because my car was broke down. Well, I thought I saw so-and-so driving your car. It's okay, isn't it? Well, now you have to go further. And so what happens is you become a servant to sin. You told just that one lie, but you thought, oh, that's all it. But sin is taking you further than you wanted to go, keeping you longer than you wanted to stay, and costing you more than you wanted to pay. And so what happens is when we share our burdens to God, you're sitting there going, God, this is getting in my way. I'm stumbling over this all the time. I need you to remove this stumbling block from me. All right. Psalms 141:2. Remember, we talked about how we cast those burdens on him was through prayer, right? Telling him about it. And I'll get into that. You say, well, I don't know how to pray. We'll get into that. So it says, let my prayer be set forth before thee as incense, and the lifting of my hands as the evening sacrifice. So your prayer is like incense. Back then, incense, think about it as perfume, a sweet fragrance. I know there's some smells that you can hear that are called incense that you may say, I don't like that. Well, that's not what this is talking about. This is talking about a good fragrance. And especially think about back then, you had a bunch of animals and everything else, and sometimes they had those animals in the house. It would stink, so anything that you burnt probably smelled better than animals do. So incense is a pleasing fragrance. So God sees your prayers as a pleasing fragrance. Okay, put up Revelations 5:8. And when he had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each one holding a harp and a golden bowl. That golden bowl was full of fragrant incense, which are the prayers of the saints. What does a golden bowl symbolize? The fact that it's gold, it means that whatever is inside that bowl is cherished and seen as important. So what happens is, that means that the fact that that's a golden bowl, that God cherishes our prayers. The other thing is, the fact that it is a bowl means that he collects our prayers. He doesn't discard them. Think about that. That's where a lot of times I sit there and go, the prayers of our ancestors, the prayers of our relatives and all that, a lot of times I think those are stored up for particular times. And you sit there and say, oh no, it prayed and it had a 15-minute expiration time. And if you think about that, you sit there and a lot of times you go, well, I prayed for this and it didn't happen, so God must have said no. Or if you took on, well, he collected the prayer, maybe it's just not time to answer that prayer yet in its fullness for the greatest impact. He talked about acknowledge his ways and he would guide our steps, right? And so the thing is, maybe, a lot of times we have that thing, if it didn't happen in 15 minutes, he's not going to answer that prayer. And he may be holding on to it and saying, it's coming, it's coming. And think about it, I imagine he gets an excitement, kind of like birthing. It's coming, I know about it. I see what's coming. He's getting ready to bless you. And that prayer he's got it in that bowl, and it's precious to him. I'm going to let this fully develop, so at the right time, it's going to be wonderful. It'd be Trump up there. It's a big prayer. It's a big, beautiful prayer. There's nothing better than that. It's the most beautiful prayer you ever saw. But that's what God would be doing, right? He's sitting there going, I'm waiting for that right time in fullness to make this work, right? So the fact that it's in a golden mold means it's precious and valued by God, and it also means he's collecting our prayers. Acts 17:28. So it says, for in him we live and move and have our being. As certain of your own poets had said, for we are his offspring. So, God, in him we live, move, and have our being. Does that mean that we're doing anything without God? And I say, where are you going with this? I got 3 points after I get this one. I'm doing a little bit different. I'm putting all the foundational scriptures in here. So in him we live, move, and have our being. And so what happens is, if we are not taking God with us and doing everything in God and through God, what are we doing? We're fighting nature. You're fighting the system, so to speak. Because in him you live, move, and in all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll guide your path. But if you say, I don't acknowledge him and I'm going to do things my own way, then what happens is he's not guiding your path, and you're going through the briars, the thickets, the thorns, because you say, no, I got this and I'm doing it my way. And God says, I have a plan and I want to guide you. Remember, taking the burdens and all that, I talked about taking the obstacles out of our way. More often than not, we are putting the obstacles in our way. And God is the one that can take them out of our way. But in our rush to get there, we sit there and say, no, I'm going to do it without God. I know better. And then he says, you sure you want to go through the thicket? Or the swamp? The quicksand? You don't know you're going to get mired in this along the way? Psalm 16:11. Thou wilt show me the path of life. In thy presence is fullness of joy. At thy right hand there are pleasures forevermore. So, he's talking, where is joy at? And what does fullness of joy talk about? A lot of times you can be happy, right? Happiness is kind of a temporary thing. I'm happy about this, whatever. Joy is about a state of being, right? It's not just a moment, so to speak, of happiness. And so when you talk about fullness of joy, what you're talking about, there's not any more joy available than that. That's fullness. It kind of goes back in a way, if you think about it. My cup overrunneth, right? If you go back to the Jewish custom was when somebody came to visit, you poured them a drink. And the amount you poured in the cup was how long you wanted them to stay. It was your message to them, I got 15 minutes, I got a half hour, or I got the whole day. And when you say my cup runneth over, what it means is God says, I got all the time in the world for you. And so it talks to fullness of joy. It means God is all the way there for you. And there's no way that you can have any more joy than this. It's the fullness of joy. That there's no other. It's the infinite level of it, right? And so let's go on to, let's see. I messed up here, didn't I? I got Psalm 16:11 down here. Oh, it's the same one. It's just New Living Translation. I'm sorry. You have the new, put it up in the New Living. It said, you will show me the way of life, granting me the joy of your presence and the pleasures of living with you forever. And if you think about it, God created us, did he not? And who knows better how we work than the person that created us? When you have a problem with a product at work and stuff like that, and you're talking to a vendor, and a lot of times they'll say, well, we got to go to R&D, research and development. Why do we go to R&D? Because these are the people that designed it and made it work in the first place. So when there's a problem that's not working right, they go, who do we go to? Well, let's go back to the people who built this, made it, designed it. If God is the one that designed us, created us, who knows more about us having joy than him? And who, if we're broken, who knows more about fixing us than him? All right. And so go ahead and put up the Psalms 22:3. It said, but thou art holy, O thou that inhabits the praises of Israel. So God inhabits the praises of Israel. What does that mean? Remember we said in his presence is fullness of joy? So the next question is, okay, how do I get into his presence? Right here it says he inhabits the praises of Israel. At the time that Israel was the one who was praising him, now the whole world has access through Jesus, right, to praise him. So if we want to get in his presence, we praise him, right? You know, this morning we felt his presence here. And what were we doing? We were praising him, right? Put up Psalm 37:4. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Now this is, oh wow, God's going to give me the desires of my heart. Don't forget the first part of that. It says, delight yourself in the Lord. What happens is, think of it like marriage. Marriage, what happens is, when you love somebody so much, the two become one flesh. What happens is when Tammy wants something and stuff like that, my desires start to be her desires. I know Tammy wants this particular thing, and I want that for her too because I love her. And so our desires become the same thing. So if we love God so much, we start desiring the same thing he wants. And then so we start getting the desires of our heart because we delight ourselves in the Lord. Then when it comes into prayers like, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, what that is you're saying, Lord, let your desires come about. And remember, I talked about before, we'll talk about prayer. The Lord's Prayer, when did the Lord's Prayer get introduced in the Bible? When the disciples asked, teach us to pray. So there you have, how do you pray? First off, it said, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Worship God. And you said, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. I want your stuff. I want that stuff. Give me this day my daily bread. So you start bringing your petitions. Hey, give me my bread. And what it gets into is, you notice he said, give me this day my daily bread. Don't worry so much about tomorrow and the day after that and what could happen, because a lot of what could happen never happens. Don't get so caught up and anxious about everything coming down the road. Just sit there and be in the moment. Be still and know I am God. And know I'm going to take care of you. So just worry about getting stuff for today. Don't always be worrying about what could be coming down the road. Oh man, it looks bad. It looks bad. You never know. How many times have we seen like a hurricane that's coming this way and everybody gets all panicky and everything else, and then either the hurricane fizzles out or it moves further east or west, it doesn't hit you. But you could get all anxious. I'm not saying don't prepare, but what I'm saying is don't get your anxiety up, and also realize that when it comes to that day, give me this day my daily bread. He's going to take care of you every day. If you go back and look in the desert when he was giving them the manna from heaven, when did they collect the manna? They did it every day. They were not allowed to gather it and keep it longer except for the day before the Sabbath, because they would gather enough for the Sabbath day. And there were some people that went and did it, and I think it became all moldy and nasty and everything else. But what was that about? I don't want you to have to worry about everything. Just take care of what you need to right now, being that present in the moment and not so worked up about what can happen. Because you know what? I got you tomorrow. Don't worry about that. Oh, I got to figure out how I'm going to carry all this manna in the desert. I got to get some more carts and stuff like that to carry with me, because who's to say when I get further down the road it's going to be there? No, I got you. Just worry about it today. Get what you need. All right. Psalms 104. It said, enter in his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him and bless his name. So we were asking, how do we get in his presence? Because he has fullness of joy, right? You get in his presence, enter into his gates with thanksgiving, enter into his courts with praise. So I'm going to be thankful to God going into his presence. I'm going to go into his courts with praise. And so you're going to praise him for who he is, what he's done. And so that's how you get in his presence. And going back to the Lord's Prayer, it said, give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us. And then it goes into forgive us our trespasses. Lord, get the sin out of my life so I don't stumble over that, right? And it says, for thine is the kingdom and thine is the glory. You know, so those are the things. So where have I been going with this? What's this got to do with leg day? Point number one, we are made of three things: spirit, mind, or soul, and body. We're constituted of three things. To ignore that is stupidity. Okay, number two, God desires our prayers, and they are sweet fragrance to him. He desires intimacy with us. He wants to share what's going on in our life. He wants all that. He wants that fellowship. What happened? Jesus said he came to restore that which was lost. What was lost? In the Garden of Eden, God put Adam in charge of the garden, but every day God would come down there and talk to him. Hey, what's going on? Show me what you're doing in the garden. Everything else. He's like, hey, show me what's going on. Tell me about all the things you're doing, everything. He wants that fellowship on a daily basis, right? And so he desires that intimacy. Prayers, praise, and worship are ways we share intimacy with God. Pastor's been sharing how much his increased prayer time has enriched his life. Have y'all noticed an excitement in him that wasn't there before? If you know him and stuff, would you, if you gotten in some of that inner circle, would you say he's been more depressed in the past year? I would say prior to this prayer time, he didn't share it all the time, but I'm saying he was more depressed and stuff like that. But since he's gotten in this prayer time, it's changed. Why is that? He's getting in God's presence, and in his presence is fullness of joy, right? So that's point number 3. In his presence is fullness of joy. And so God desires intimacy, and we're made up of spirit, soul, and body. If we neglect the spiritual side, we can't reach our full potential, and we won't be full of joy. It's just like skipping leg day. If you're a bodybuilder and you don't do leg day, it actually affects the rest of your abilities in lifting weights and everything else. I remember times when people used to say back in the day, hey man, I seem like I've hit this plateau and stuff like that, and people go, you've been working your legs? It's kind of like all these things get interrelated and all that. But the thing is, if we neglect our spiritual side, what you're doing is you're operating not on all cylinders. And then the other thing, think about it like a balanced meal. You know, if I eat meat only, am I going to be good and be able to do as much as I can if I have a balanced diet? Your diet's like your fuel, right? So if you're taking in gas that's got rust in it, water in it, what happens to your engine? It may still run, but you're not going to be putting out the full horsepower that it was designed to do. And the thing is, what I'll tell you is, on the spiritual side, there's scriptures in the Bible where it talks about open their eyes so that they can see what's going on. And, you know, God opens their eyes and they see all the angels about them. And it says, oh, there's more, instead of the enemy only. He said, there's more for us than there are against us. But when we neglect our spirit, we neglect a large part of our side. And the fact is, God can do more for us than we can do on our own. And so what you're doing when you're neglecting that, you're never going to get your full potential. And if you can't get your full potential, are you going to be in joy? And then what I'll get into, back when I was younger, it used to be all these people would go off to find themselves. And, you know, they go to Europe or whatever and got to find myself. Or they go hitchhiking across the country, got to find myself. And the thing is, they're neglecting the whole reason why did they want to find themselves? Because they didn't feel the fullness of joy. And the thing is, who created you? The Creator, right? So that means who defined you? That means your Creator did. If you ignore, neglect the Creator, you will never reach your full potential, because He's the one that defined you and designed you to reach that. And so the reason people went to find themselves was because they were never acknowledging the spiritual side of their life, and they were chasing everything and everywhere, whichever the wind blew. And they're like a dog that says squirrel, and look over there, and that little moment of happiness when they did something, oh, I must be finding my joy. No, because it's fleeting. And the thing is, when you neglect it, so the only way you're going to truly get that joy is when you get in the presence of God. And then once you start getting in that presence, what you find is, if you remember Abraham, when he had that covenant with God, and remember, Jesus said he came to make a more better covenant. When Abraham had the covenant with God, when he was going to go in and get rid of Sodom and Gomorrah, God said, we need to tell Abraham about what we're getting ready to do. So when you get in that presence and have that intimacy with God, God starts sharing His plans with you. And then think about it. When you get yourself all worked up and get anxious about something, you're going to go do a bunch of stuff, God might sit there and say, I got this. Don't go spend $1,000 on XYZ because you think you need to do this. I got this. This is the plan. You're going over here and swimming upstream. That's not the plan. And so that's where we have to trust in Him with all our heart. That means spirit, soul, and body. And so what happens is, when we neglect that spirit, we're going around with bird legs. and you're more like the bird that just hatched and got the wobble legs because you can't support the rest of you. And you sit there and your body's over here and says, you know what, I can bench press 250 pounds. I got this, I got this, I got this. And he says, well, if you can't stand up, do you really got this? Maybe it's a standing press. We're going to press up. If you can't stand up, can you do the standing press? Well, my arms are good. My arms are good. My shoulders are good. No, can you do that? And what are your legs? It's the foundation. What is the foundation of your life? It's God, the Spirit. And so when we neglect that, we are never going to reach our full potential, and you're always going to have a problem with joy, true joy, that's not fleeting in your life. And so that's the secret of getting that joyful life. The joy of the Lord is my strength. It's not me prepping and working out with the weights and everything else that does my body, right? The joy of the Lord is my strength. And so what happens is, my strength is, if I get joy by being in His presence, then it starts getting into the presence of God as my strength. And so you start seeing that you have that presence of God being your strength. And so what we need to do is we need to fully experience Him and know Him. How many times did God say, be still and know I am God? Take care of that stuff first before you even try to tackle all the other stuff. Don't do this alone. And that's what the message is. And so at this time, and I'll reiterate the point. So point number one were three things: spirit, soul, and body. Number two, God desires our prayers, and they're a sweet fragrance to Him. He desires intimacy with us. He wants us. He wants to have fellowship with us. How do we do that? Through our prayers. It talked about we should forcibly chunk our burdens on Him, right? He doesn't desire us to go through carrying all these burdens all the time. He said, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. And then number three, in His presence is fullness of joy. So in order to get there, we need to get into His presence. How do we do that? We do that for prayer. Don't know how to pray? Talk to God. Look at the Lord's Prayer. If you follow through that, that's the steps. Praise Him, right? Enter His gates with thanksgiving, His courts with praise. That's how you get in His presence and get the fullness of joy. Then your desires start becoming what His desires are. And then what happens is you're going to get that fullness of joy.